Welcome back, YouTube, fellow berserkers. Today we're out here at the Viking camp and we're going to start our series Introduction to Blacksmithing. I'm happy to have you along as I'm going to show you around my shop, explain some of the equipment, and explain what basic tools you will require or what I recommend you may get to start out. The first important component of the Blacksmith Shop that I'd like to introduce, besides the major components of the equipment, is the personal protection equipment, the PPE. A good pair of leather gloves. Now, any type of leather gloves from your welding shop, if you have a pair of good leather gloves that you like to wear that aren't quite, this style, but I really encourage that you wear a type of, at least a thin leather glove, so you have at least some feeling, but it protects you in case you do touch the hot steel, and you will do mistakes. You will have mistakes, and they will cost you if you're not careful. I have several scars from burns, not working long hours, and you turn around and put something down, and you turn around and you pick it up, and you realize, oh, it's hot. You could take that glove off. You may have burned the glove, but your hand you get away with a minor irritation. When I use the power grinder, when I use some kind of chiseling tool or something that can really shoot metal up into my face real fast, then I wear a face shield. It completely covers my entire face. I don't have to worry. A pair of eye protection when you're using the forge over there is a very good thing to do, especially if you're going to use wood charcoal. Now, there's another disadvantage from the wood charcoal I forgot to mention earlier. Wood charcoal blows off a lot of sparks, and those sparks, they snap out and they get up in your face and they give you these little burn blisters under your eyes, and they're kind of, you have to be careful not to get them in your eyes. So a good pair of nice comfortable goggles would really be a great benefit. I have here is a leather apron. This was given to me, actually. This is a special gift. This leather apron, I don't wear it too often because it's a little bit uncomfortable, but when I'm doing forge welding, and it's actually really nice leather too. When I'm doing forge welding and work that requires a lot of spattering metal, like if I slam down on the metal to weld two pieces together, it's going to spit metal in all directions, and I want to make sure I don't get any hot metal on me while I'm working, so that I can reduce the risk of injury or have to interrupt my work because I'm on fire. So over here we have our coal forge. The coal forge operates on solid fuels such as charcoal, wood charcoal, or bituminous coals. There's different fuels that have different advantages also and disadvantages. So let's go over that real quick. Over here I have what's in German Holzkohle. So this is basically just charred coal, wood charcoal. The advantage of having wood charcoal is that it burns extremely clean, and it gives you a nice clean fire with very little smoke and gases escaping from the fire, which could be harmful, such as sulfur and phosphorus, sometimes even actually it attacks your workpiece, and it gets in the metal and it corrodes the metal, and it's very hazardous to work around, as breathing that is really bad for your lungs. Over here we have bituminous coal, which is a more modern fuel, and this particular field forge operates on a mechanical basis, which means I have a pedal here, there's a bellows here that turns when I operate the foot pedal, and that allows me to produce air flow to increase the temperature in the fire. I have a regulator valve right here that opens and closes and I have a dump for all of the ashes, so I can regularly open and close this and shake this to allow all of the deposits that are burning in the coals that are settling on top of the air valve to fall through. And this is a gas forge. This runs off of propane gas. This forge, the advantage of this forge is very little effort to heat up the steel. So I have this open. I put my steel inside there, and you let this heat up for about 15-20 minutes until it gets operating temperature. The cool thing about the gas forge is that while you put metal inside, the temperature is always the same. The metal will not burn up as if you were to put metal inside this fire over here at the solid fuel forge and you were to pump the bellows, the temperature would constantly be up and down. You would have to really constantly keep an eye on the piece of metal, pull it out, look at it, make sure you're not burning it up, because you can quickly burn up a piece of metal in a solid fuel forge with no effort at all if you're not careful. It'll look like a sparkler candle, like on New Year's, the little sparklers, and then you'll know you've ruined your workpiece and you have to start all over. I explained the forges. Now we're going to go over to the anvil. The anvil is a pretty simple thing to explain. Now everybody's going to always say they want the biggest anvil there is, and you know, in reality, the average person does not need a huge anvil. I have a huge anvil because I want one. That's why, and I actually am getting a larger one than this here soon, which is going to break my wallet, but I must have it because, like I said, I don't need, but I want it. So I'll have 2 large anvils. Anvils are becoming a commodity, much like antique cars or things of that nature. So large anvils are becoming rare and ultimately super expensive. So I have some opportunity to acquire a 350 kilogram anvil, which is another 100 kilograms on top of what this one is. An average anvil, I should say, if you're going to be doing a lot of traveling and you're going to be doing a lot of moving the anvil constantly because you have to set your workshop up and when you're done put it back so that you're limited to space. Basically, you can't permanently set up your anvil like I have mine right here. Something between 50 to 70 kilograms is recommendable. Now 70 kilograms, that's already starting to get into the to the more heavier anvil types, but 70 to 80 kilograms, that anvil will do everything that you can make: small swords, knives, nails, anything you really need in a like a hardware or tools, or that anvil size is adequate. If you have an anvil that has a nice ring to it when you hit it, that's a nice quality anvil. However, it does get to your hearing, and your hearing is valuable, so you want to be able to dampen that sound down some, so that the ring from the anvil is quieted down. And so I put this chain on. This is a heavy industrial chain. I got it from the junk, and I nailed my anvil to the wood stump here, so it would not fall on me. And then I wrapped this chain around it, and I nailed the chain onto the wood stump as well, real solidly, and it quiets my anvil down. So I have a nice sturdy post to mount my post vise to. That's why it's called a post vise, because you mount it on a post. And you'll see this at every blacksmith shop you go to here nowadays. This is also not a very historically correct object, as this type of vise hasn't been around probably since the late 1800s, 1900s in Europe. Here they came about. So, but this piece of equipment does help me greatly work up here, and it does give it a kind of classical look here. Now the second thing, some kind of eye protection. Hammers. Now one of your most important tools as a blacksmith is going to be your hammers. You can have 3 hammers, you can have 300 hammers. It depends up to what your budget is, your skill level, your space. So I recommend for a beginning blacksmith, if you're going to be a beginning blacksmithing, that you get yourself about 3 or 4 really good different types of hammers that I'm about to explain to you. So this is your kind of standard size hammer. This is about a 1.5 kilogram hammer. It's a nice small weight that you can easily work with. It's got a beveled flat surface there to stretch the metal out, to flatten it. And then you have a nice oval tip there, so you can actually stretch. It's for stretching out pieces of metal so that it's you can make it longer, and then you can flatten it out this way. This is a really good all-around blacksmith hammer. I actually went out and bought this one. This was my first purchased blacksmith hammer that I had ever bought, because I usually always go diving in the junk, and I find all kinds of nice old things and I restore them. And that was actually the first one I had to actually go buy, because I was missing exactly a tool like that. I do have, I believe, the size up from this as well, which is it's very nice to have that when you're trying to smash down some real thick, heavy steel. Now, this is a standard ball peen. This hammer is really good for making for forming metal into, if it's like thin metal, for forming like the Oserberg lamp dishes, for dishes, for making like a dish shape. If I were to show you real quick, something like this, that is if you have a hollow form, you put your round piece of steel in there and you would use your ball peen hammer, the round end, to make this shape. You would have to have a negative form of some kind, a wood stump or actual metal piece. It depends really what kind of makeshift tool you would like to use. And then you have your standard flat edge as well, which is good for just your standard working. This is another hammer that I had just recently purchased. I am very happy I purchased this hammer. This hammer comes out once in a while. It's not one of my common hammers, but I need it quite often when I'm trying to do large jobs that I have to stretch the metal. This has a really nice oval side on here, which is good for stretching out big pieces of metal, and then I have a flat end on here for flattening it, and it has a nice weight, and I like the way it looks. So setting up your hammers is real important as well. Let me take the camera off the tripod once more. I have several hooks, which are just basically two pointed ends, and I pre-drill them and then I hammer them into my wood stump that I hang my tools from. On this side I hang my hammers because I'm a right-handed person. I have my hammers on the right hand, so I can select the hammers that I'm not using and place them in their parking spaces over here while I'm working up on the anvil. And I'm doing a job where I constantly have to switch between 2-3 types of hammers. I can easily just put them into the bracket there and change up the tool and continue to work. Now we're talking real quickly about tongs. Now tongs is another topic. There's probably 1,000 different types and a couple different ways to make them. Your first tongs, I recommend, now this is my recommendation. When I started blacksmithing about 10 years ago, I tried to make my first tongs straight off, and I failed miserably, and I got very discouraged about that, and I ended up making my tongs out of cut and weld, cutting and welding certain pieces of metal together that I have just shaped together, you know, in the vise, and they weren't pretty, but they got the job done. And then I started building up my tool selection from tongs that I have actually reconditioned from the junk, or actually went online and bought, but that's a long story. So tongs, I recommend go online, find some used tongs on a auction, on a website for used tools, on a yard sale, anywhere there's like used tools. I have this pair of tongs. These are a pair of tongs, tongue twister tongs, that's what that is. I bought these were kind of pricey, but these are really awesome. I have these also in 3 different sizes. These are called bolt tongs because you could hold like a bolt in the front there, and that's what those were for. Focus the camera a little bit better. Yeah, they have a groove here. You can hold small pieces sideways, or you can actually hold a piece of metal from the front like that. It's got a square opening in the front. Really good for holding square pieces of metal. I like these a lot when I make flint steel strikers. I have 2 or 3 different sizes of these, and they were well worth the money that I paid for them. Now we've talked about the hardy hole here recently, which is the square hole in the anvil. Each anvil has a different size hole. They come from 14, 16, 18, 22, 24, and such, and they go up to about 30 to 35 millimeters on some of the very large anvils that I've seen. This particular one here, I'm going to take an educated guess and say this one is about 30 millimeters. Now your hardy tool, it fits onto your hardy hole here on the anvil. It just slides in there, and just as so. And I actually ended up making this one for my Oserberg lamp projects. I needed something to shape this piece of metal here to this shape over here. It has shaped this flat piece into this bowl shape using a ball here, and I'm looking to improve this idea because I really need something that has more of a dish shape, and I can actually peen the piece of metal down into to get that nice bowl shape. Now this particular piece here is something I made just for that task. Now a blacksmith's got to be versatile in his tools. You have to be able to improvise something efficiently. If you don't have a tool, you have to make it, or you'll have to make another tool into the tool that you need, and it's a thing you do as a blacksmith. So this is a really neat tool. It's kind of a little bit smaller than the hole, but it does fit securely. This is for bending pieces of steel. You put them in here when they're hot, and you can bend them around to make hooks or curls or S hooks and whatever. They make these also in many different types of configurations, where you have a big piece of metal here and a small piece of metal here to control the actual radius of the bends you prefer for your job. Cool. This tool here specifically is going to be one of your most important hardy tools. This is going to be called a hot cut hardy, specifically this one here. This is what blacksmiths traditionally use to cut steel. So this right here is actually forged out of a piece of steel, a piece of tool steel, hardened so that the cutting edge is similar to that, like a chisel, and it fits into the hardy hole here more or less. This one here is this is the only one that I have. Cut the metal, the blacksmith would go and actually put his hot steel here and then give very gentle strikes to the top of the steel and rotate it back and forth along different edges of the cutting tool to allow the heat not to soak into the tool, which would anneal it and make it soft and ruin the tool. And then when it gets right before it cuts off, he taps the piece he wants to cut very softly on the other side of the workpiece, and then the piece falls off. It's called a hot cut hardy. That's all for today. Thanks for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, if this is your first time watching, or you're interested in coming back to check out more, please feel free to subscribe. It would really help out the channel, and I'm working very hard to give you guys the best content that I can get out there and expand the channel. I do have a Patreon that I'm working on, which would also help out here. I'll leave a link in the bottom for those of you who would like to help out with that. That would be awesome as well. Every little bit helps, and the dogs will also appreciate every bit, because they're part of the Berserker gang. Prince carries all the tools, and Gonzo is always around to make sure everything is done right. So I'm going to be introducing the dogs here in the video coming up here soon, once I get this blacksmith project on the road. So like always, stay safe and see you soon.